Good morning. I want to go through the anaclastic bracelet forming on film so you can have it. I started out with an 8-inch piece of 20 gauge sterling silver. I had the supplier cut it for me so that it was very even. Then I roll printed it with lace. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. Then I measured my wrist. Remember, we put, not my wrist, my fist. We put a piece of paper around, and then we knew how long we would need to have it to get over our hand. I cut off about 1/2 inch. And then I took a round bracelet mandrel, and with a rawhide mallet, I just made it round. Remember, it doesn't have to be round when you're soldering that seam. It's just like a bezel. It could be sort of squished and pushed past each other, the whole thing. So far, this is my 3rd attempt. I haven't finished the others yet. So once you round it on the round bracelet mandrel, go ahead and put it into the dapping tool. It doesn't go all the way to the bottom. It's got air in the center. This is the matching punch, great big punch. These can be used in the hydraulic press. This is a Peppy brand, and in the Peppy brand, the shank actually unscrews. So if you wanted to use it in the hydraulic press, you could. So what I found was the first one I made was fairly easy to get started with these tools. I used hard solder on the seam. The second one that I soldered, I thought, well, the more the better, and I put a lot of hard solder on that seam. And what happened was that made it too strong at the seam and it wouldn't measure. So this one, I don't know how to get it. So this one, I don't have a lot of solder in it. So the main thing, because this is a kind of forging, is as you're going along and you notice that it's going out of round, correct it. Constantly correct it, because in forging, which is what this is, once you work harden it in a certain position, it's hard, even if you anneal it, to get it where you need to go. So like the forged copper bracelets, same thing. Correct it as you go along. Okay, so it's in there. I'm going to put my headphones on and use my 2-pound mallet. I can tell already that not having so much solder is making it easier for me here. So I flipped it over. Okay, notice how I looked at the edge and the areas that weren't bending, I went back in with the stake at an angle to focus more on that area. So now I'm going to see how hard it is. Okay, it's very hard again. So I'm going to go anneal it. Okay, so that's annealing number 1. I did not anneal it before I began. So I'm going to go back and round it. I've got some flat spots and bends that I don't want. So one of the sides is bent more than the other one. I did 2 rounds on that side, so I'm going to flip it over. Okay, so I'm starting to get a roll. It's uneven, so I'm gonna keep flipping it back and forth. I can still do a couple more rounds. Okay, so we're human beings and not a machine. So there's no way that every hammer blow on a mallet can hit dead center with the same amount of force every single time we hit it. So that's why we need to keep checking and going back in areas that may have moved more. They might have been softer. Okay, so once we have a pretty good groove there, we want to start doing it manually. Robin Cornelius, really, who invented this technique, she didn't invent anaclastic raising, but this wave bracelet, said that she enjoys doing it by hand more than with the stake. So I also love the feeling of metal moving, but if I get out of round, I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the stake. So you can see that part of it's already rolled over. So I'm going to avoid that area and start going around. If you hammer too much on one side, on the edge, without flipping it over, the material will go like this, and you'll have a longer side on the top than the bottom. So you do want to try to hit the same amount and not do a whole round just on one side. So I'm using my favorite hammer in the world that I've had for 50 years. I'm using the slightly domed side. Rio still has this. It's my favorite one. If you want to get it, I can measure it and tell you what the measurements are to make sure you get the right one. Okay, so I'm going to be coming down on that curve slightly like this, not completely straight. Okay, so it's coming along. I'm going to flip it now because we do want the rolls amount of those lips to be fairly even. You can tell from the sound that I'm not hitting it very hard. I'm also not holding it back here and throwing it because this is fairly soft. We've got a steel bench pin, a bench block, and a steel hammer, so that's a lot of force. Can you see that I am hammering it at a slight angle, not completely straight? So as you're going along when you're forging, you always want to go back and look at the edge. In this bracelet, it's it's going to end up with bends in the edge, but when you can control it, then you'll have control over the end result as well. So you won't be forced to do something you might not have wanted to do. Okay, I flipped it back over, and I'm going to try to keep looking. Where can I hold it? What can I hold it up to? Hold on. So it's coming along, but it needs to be a deeper, and it needs to be consistent all the way around. So I'm looking at both edges. If I see a discrepancy right now, I'll go ahead and correct it. In other words, if I've got a little lump or wiggle where I don't want it, I'll go back and correct it. Again, at some point I may lay this flat, lay another flat bench block on it and hit down on it a little just to kind of flatten it at the same amount of stress. So constantly flipping over is the key when you're doing forging. Okay, so this side really needs more. So when doing any forging, you try to keep control of both sides. So now we're finally getting somewhere. And you can tell from the sound that I'm not hitting it real hard. So I'm actually hitting it over air. So I'm hitting it over the empty space. If I was hitting it flat, on an anvil, it would make more noise. Okay, so anytime you're hitting over air, that's a good thing. You're not going to put extra dents you don't want in. So now I'm just kind of going around inspecting that edge. If I need to roll a certain section more, maybe. It's getting real rolled. Want to keep checking the other side so I don't get too far over. It's very easy to see where you might need to go back in with a couple more blows to even it out. So whenever we're forging, we try to overlap blows. But again, any kind of raising involves going over and back and over and back and correcting. So, and this is a great place to start, but if you're making a teapot, you would still be doing the same things if you were Paul Revere. Okay, so I'm going to flip it and see where we're at. Keep looking, keep watching. It's not uncommon, even for experts like Robin Cornelius, to either crack a seam or crack an edge. Again, we're not exerting exactly the same pounds per square inch as we would in a machine. But even so, things can slip, and you always end up, any craftsman ends up correcting the object as they go along. So I'm getting there. It's getting pretty deep. I might stop pretty soon. Keep your hand out of the way of your hammer, just like when you're sawing. Don't, try to hit too close to your hand. Okay, I am going to tap this a little bit on both sides. Just to kind of make the edge a little more even. Not tremendously with all the force I have. It's one hand. So now I'm looking at it to see what's what. I might want to go back in right there. Just trying to get the top sort of even. Robin Cornelius doesn't seem to worry about it too much. I think she likes the organicness of her edges. So when you look at them up close, you can see they're not perfect in any way. All right, got a little bit more to do here. Okay, so one thing that I figured out after I demoed this is, you can use a hammer to get the thin parts and make it undulate. But also you can use the handle of a hammer, or in this case it's just a piece of wooden dowel. You could use a ring mandrel. So of course, if I'm going to use the ring mandrel, I'm going to use my rawhide mallet. So what I'm doing is I'm just placing it over the edge, and I'm going to hit it a little bit, see if I might need to anneal it. So I'm starting to pinch it. My bracelets are kind of small because I have a small wrist. So I'm not going to do 5 or 6 rounds of this. So I won't have 5 or 6 sets of the little pins that go through. So when I'm doing that, again, I want to flip it over. And depending on how rippled I got it, I might want to go back in and roll it. So I think I'm going to make a mark where I want to have the waves occur. So in this case, probably divide it into quadrants because it's not very big. I just marked it into quadrants. Also, if after you go through, you want to open one of them up, it's not exactly how you want it. Plastic is a really good way to do it. They sell those plastic pot scrapers at like dollar store, which are great. I'm always looking for pieces of plastic like this, so I don't remember. Obviously it came. It might be a ceramics tool, I'm not sure. So all you do is you can stick it. If you can't even get this in, you can use a screwdriver. You just have to be careful. I have a small jewelry screwdriver. I opened up one of them with that the other day. Okay, so if I roll my ring mandrel when I'm hitting on it, I'm going to get a more even edge. It's kind of hard to see, isn't it? On both sides. It's not that I couldn't correct it with a hammer. It's just I'm using something that's more efficient. Okay, so I think I'm going to go to the opposite side. Again, I'm rolling it. So it's really up to you how close you want to get the edges when you pinch them. I do want to put the little rivets in. So I need some space, probably about that much in the one I'm doing. So I'm going to continue with this, and one of the things that needs to happen is you need to, this is one I did the other day, the edges some will protrude more. They might have indentations from hammers or just from the working process. So you do want to file or sand so that you have an even edge before you polish it. So really drilling and putting the rivets in is going to come at the very end after it's polished. So right now I've got 3 pieces in progress, and I'm just going to continue on. I bought some drill bits, but I think they're a little too big for what I want. Robin Cornelius's little rivets are 20 gauge. I just ordered some drill bits, but when I got them, I found out they're from China, so I'm not expecting a lot from them. So I'll post again when I get a little further along, and for now, I'll see you soon. Bye.